there's also my history in this landscape as a writer. Not far from here is the restaurant where I waited tables for over 15 years while collecting rejections and learning how to write. I've probably written in more than half the coffee shops and libraries in this area. I used to write at Caltech in a multi-level library with outstanding views of the mountains, especially after a hard rain, until 9/11 happened and security people began requesting student and faculty IDs. While my then small sons attended the free church daycare at All Saints, I surreptitiously secreted myself in a corner of Roman's coffee shop and worked. I learned to write when and where I could. Soccer games, swimming lessons, children's birthday parties. In fact, I'm writing this sentence while sitting on my bed, having just helped my youngest find his swimming trunks. I can hear the bustle of my family, my eldest getting a glass of water from the kitchen. Did I mention we live in a small house, Caltrans? Lately, the swish of the washing machine and the rattle of the dryer have been my writing soundtrack. Two of the businessmen I waited on at that restaurant, Mr. David Partridge, who Kathy Partridge is right there, everyone, and Mr. Jim Galbraith, who I noticed was a sponsor of this, generously gifted me with private office space for close to 4 years, where they also worked, which revolutionized my writing life. I discovered that, though not a requirement, a room of one's own, as Virginia Woolf proposed, is optimal. It does help quite a bit. I wrote and continued to write until it became a necessary habit. I had to write. I didn't know whether I had talent, but I hoped I did, and sometimes I supposed I did. Nevertheless, I trained myself to write each day. That way I could finally call myself a writer, an assessment and designation that took years for me to claim. Sorry. Ooh. 20 minutes of writing here and there between diapers and spit up and laundry. It didn't matter because I'd written that day. I began to understand that what I was trying to do, what I wanted to do, was harder than just about anything. Even when it felt easy, it was hard. So I had to be more patient and willing to accept failure and rejection, not as occasional hazards, but as continuing requirements. Time passed, years passed. While my sons went to grade school, I got my MFA from UC Riverside. For me, having a supportive partner was and is invaluable and essential. Writing wasn't a luxury, as my parents and some others suggested. In fact, I sacrificed indulgences, security, responsibility, time, movies, TV, money, parties, a social life, in order to write. It must help you, my mother used to say, to write things out. Sure it does, but it can also feel like the antithesis of therapy, the opening and examining and mining of wounds and insecurities and losses and shame, the solitude and introversion and doubts. Hours and hours, this is where I get a little whiny, sorry. Hours and hours of my life spent with no monetary gain, nothing to show for it, no publications, not much in the way of encouragement, not much good feeling or elation. But don't get me wrong, there was a payoff, including the hope and sense that I was communing with writers whose work I admired and respected, whose examples I wished to honor, a noble foundation that still holds true.